Uh, today's today's topic is extremely important to me. It's a big part of what I do. So, what kind of reaction would you have if I were to say to you, all right, we need to talk about care decisions, or all right, we got to talk about end of life planning? Would your reaction be, oh boy, let's do it? Or would you kind of feel a little bit of a rut row and a sinking feeling? Do you become apprehensive? There's a gazillion reasons that people don't communicate well. Maybe we don't know which way this conversation is going to go. Or perhaps we're intimidated by the other person and we clam up. Many times we don't know how to start the conversation. Talking produces fear and even dread in many people. A lot of my work in patient advocacy, whether that's surrounding aging or healthcare navigation, involves coaching around communication, sometimes as much as the advocacy and guiding actions themselves. Improving communication is a big part of my how-to department. Knowing how to start a difficult conversation is your ticket in for so many people. So I'm glad that we're here today to examine ways to get into a conversation. All right. The words on this slide kind of represent the why it's hard and a little bit of the why we don't talk. A great many of us are not skilled in conversations, especially tricky ones, and especially in times of stress. There's a lot of muck and mire relative to talking in healthcare, impending decisions, or even end of life. So things may be sticky. Some situations just are. Or gathering the right folks for a conversation may sometimes feel like you're trying to combine oil and water. You don't know what you don't know. Innocently enough, we all don't know until we come to know. We bring old baggage into conversations. Funny how we bring stuff forward. You know, my sister and I struggled with communication about caregiving for our father. We were not in agreement. She kept bringing up something that I did or didn't do on Father's Day when I was 18 years old, which at the time was 40 years previous. We both wanted what was best for our dad. We just had different ways of getting there. And now we're okay, and Dad was okay. But it's really easy to revert into old ways or default into using old information, isn't it? There's apprehension, fear of what's ahead, no experience from which to draw. We're off kilter somehow or on alert. Lack of information. That's often why folks come to me. They need solid information to make the best decisions. Perhaps we're in new territory. Maybe it's your first foray into caregiving, or maybe you've never been faced with this level of healthcare navigation or challenge, like a new diagnosis. Perhaps you've never had to talk to this person about that subject. There's preconceived ideas and myths. Many of us are socialized or imprinted to that this kind of conversation is going to be or is supposed to be uncomfortable. And it doesn't have to be. If it seems difficult, it may be human nature or certainly our own nature to avoid it. Avoid funny feelings, avoid conflict, avoid anything new. You know, we're happy to stay in our comfort zones, aren't we? Then we may feel funnier or odd or remiss because we're not doing something that we know we must. To me, this is a no, a GNOW, because it's gnawing at us. Now, some of you who've seen me present before know that I make up words that seem to do a better job of explaining what it is that I'm trying to convey. So the word I have for funny feelings, odd, remiss, when it's tugging at us is no, GNOW. When you're aware of something and it's just below the surface and it's tugging at you for your attention, it gnaws at you, and so hence the GNOW. Most of us know that conversations about care or caring or money can be tricky, and we know we have to have them. Now, I'm calling your attention to the lyrics on the slide here. I remember the exact first time that I heard my favorite artist, Bonnie Raitt, sing her Nick of Time song. These lines jumped out at me. And at the time, I was an adult child with an aging parent. And to me, Bonnie nailed it. It was weird. It was change. And those lyrics gnawed at me. So most of us can sense a G-N-O-W, no, those conversations where a care decision is sorely needed, or maybe it's about aging in general or money, they can be tricky, and yet we have to have them. So today's goals, let's set up our wins for today. Let's make talking a little less weird, shall we? Let's make that our goal for today. Let's look at why learning to navigate tricky conversations behooves us. You know, when you think about it, there's nearly always a benefit to doing the hard stuff, isn't there? The people that do converse well and often have better outcomes. They approach challenging times with greater success and also greater personal comfort. There's a lot of wins in what we're talking about today. So we're going to begin to normalize conversation. That means talking and agreeing to talk again. And it gets easier and more familiar. It becomes a thing we do from time to time. We're going to become better prepared, ready to ease on in when you spot the opportunity. These times will come and you'll learn to spot them and to harness those opportunities. We're going to learn some strategy, tips, tricks, tools. We are notching your belts today. You're going to have prior knowledge from which to draw. And when you get into the situation, you're going to remember some of what you heard today, or you can contact me. All of this is going to result in our feeling a little less weird. So I'm glad that you're all here. I'm glad to be with you. Along with empowering you and normalizing tricky conversations like we're doing right now, I have a personal goal today. And that is one of bestowing a sense of urgency along with these tips and tools. I want you to head this stuff off at the pass. We can enjoy more power and peace of mind because we can and have done some of the stuff that I'm going to present to you today. Entering a difficult conversation is something that must and can become normal. Talk and then talk again later. Revisit this stuff. End one talk with a decision and an appointment to talk again. It's like the first family meeting may seem weird, but then when there are more and kind of regular, then everybody becomes more comfortable. There's a website that'll be on the resource page that's sent out to everybody after this presentation. It's a website called Talk Early, Talk Often. And that's a pretty cool notion, isn't it? Our time together today is going to place a notch in your belt. It's designed to provide you with points of reference that you can carry into the future. You'll think, man, I've heard this before. I know what to do. I do also want to point out the NHDG that's on the slide. It's so particularly cool that we're doing this presentation on the coattails of National Healthcare Decision Day. It's April 16th every year, and it's a day to inspire and educate and empower not only the general public, but we providers about the importance of advanced care planning. So I invite you to visit my social media. I've been burning it up on LinkedIn and Facebook, a heavy campaign about advanced directives and how to. We have to make our advanced healthcare decisions, and because we get to designate our agents. We get to make sure that they know what we want, and that's conversation, and that's real power. You know, studies and common sense will tell us that we all want to retain our independence and control as we age. And I believe that advanced directives is a strong part of doing that. All right, let's get into communication mode now, conversation mode. Let's start with preparation. The first thing that we're going to do is, gain a little bit with preparation for conversation. We're going to have some thought ahead. And here's a couple of tips that I've got for preparation. The first one is gain agreement, collect a yes. In advance of conversations, collect yes or collect several yeses. For example, when you're making a date to talk, make the date and confirm it. Can we sit down this evening? Yes. Are we still on for Saturday morning to chat about your upcoming medical appointment? Yes. Or helping me to find the financial planner? Yes. Or to go over information on those assisted livings? Yes. How about the plans for when Tom and I are away? Yes. It's subtle, but simple agreements. You can collect yeses, and this technique will come in handy as we go over the other techniques today too. The second one is get comfortable in preparation. To the extent that you can, know what makes the other person comfortable. Is the other party in their favorite chair? Are you both sitting down, maybe with coffee or tea? Is it a good time of day for the other person? And is the conversation going to occur in a good place that's free of distraction? All right, we can keep gaining agreement as we begin our conversation. Keep gaining agreement, keep same paging, agreeing it's a good time, agreeing that, gosh, this feels odd. Not you, not me, but feeling odd, but this conversation does. Notice it's not about you or me. It's the conversation that's odd. Taking the issue, talking about the issue and the thing deflects any blame or one-upmanship or any power play, that kind of thing. So take a minute to level the playing field by agreeing that this may be a difficult conversation, or touchy, or emotional. Oh, gosh, Mom, this is a strange subject to be talking about. Seems weird to have to make a date to talk about showering. Frank, we may differ on our ways to achieve this, but I know that we can work together to help Tammy. Agreement can be gained right there. You're on a level playing field. This is the opportunity to respect each other and acknowledge that you may be coming from different positions. Agree on a signal to pause or stop. That empowers each person in the conversation to stop, and it keeps things on an even keel. For instance, Katie and her father, who was an ex-military man, they laughingly agreed that if the going got tough, that one party didn't want to continue, that they would salute. That would be their signal. That signal would then have them pause and then decide if they wanted to continue. They would agree to continue, or they would agree to return later, or maybe gain more information and come back together. There's multiple options, and you guessed it, they gained agreement and collected yeses. Now, in my own family, the password to stop was Go Duke, my dad's alma mater. And a client heard me relaying this one day, and she and her group decided to use the word pumpernickel because it was fun to say. Everybody smiled, and it would diffuse any tension. So use those evergreen techniques throughout. Keep gaining agreement, keep collecting yeses. And we could both feel better if we worked out how to do that. Yes. Oh, I didn't realize that was a priority for you. Let's talk about that. Okay. So it's important to you to remain in your home safely. Yes. Check in from time to time with the other person or the status of the conversation itself. It's important here that if things are touchy, moving over to the status of the conversation and away from the me-you issues, it can help deflect uneasiness. There's no me-you stuff in these kinds of sentences. Rather, they talk about the thing, the issue, the goal that we're working on together. So we might say, getting back and forth to doctor's appointments is our goal. Let's find out what our options are here. Or, wow, that's a good question. We're going to have to find out more about that. Or, let me look into that, and I'll have more information when we get back together on Monday. Keep checking in on each other. Mom, are you still feeling okay about this conversation? Is it okay to continue? Yes. I bet we never thought we'd be talking about XYZ in such detail. How are you doing with it? A little concession here, a compromise there, or just a revelation statement like, hey, Joan, here we are talking. Who'd have thought? Or we're getting through this, Frank, aren't we? Collect the yes. All right, it's time for the meat. I want to talk about my top 4 crafty lead-ins for difficult conversations. Let's dive into this. The very first one is one I call way to go. Now, going on the theme, you can catch more flies with honey. I'd say, as a practice, we can start off each conversation by acknowledging the position and talking about what's working well. Let's talk positive. For instance, you might say, I'm really glad that you moved those everyday items that you use frequently down to the lowest shelf in the kitchen so that you and Mom don't have to use that step ladder anymore. That was a great idea. Or nice job jotting down your questions to ask the doctor and a list of medications and dosages. Your thoughts are collected and your provider's going to be really impressed with your preparedness. Most everybody enjoys praise, and when your compliments are genuine, it's going to go a long way. Then you have a better opening to project your conversation into the future. And you'll find that most anybody, including our elders, will be open to more discussions if they feel like that they are appreciated and supported. The second one is consultative approach. Now, there's times and situations when people do not appreciate being asked to talk about themselves as far as elder care is concerned, especially if it may be sensitive or private health care challenges are involved. Our elders may want to avoid the subject or on their own life or their own lives altogether. On the other hand, most people are interested in helping. The youngers, I call them, the youngers among us may want our elders to help. For instance, the elders may always want to help their children or their grandchildren. Who doesn't like being asked for an opinion or a how-to? To that end, consider asking for advice about a problem you may have. For instance, the younger may ask the older, well, now that our family's growing, we need to think about estate planning. We need to think about who's going to raise Francis if something happens to us. Where did you start? How did you choose your attorney? And there are more inroads. This one might start off a housing conversation. The younger may say, it's funny, Mom, at this stage in our life, our house is overflowing with stuff now that the kids are getting bigger. Do you and Dad ever feel like this house seems big and empty now that we're all gone? That kind of spurs that thinking into housing into the future. Or this time, a young professional may say to an older, I'm starting to think about retirement, even though it's a long way off. When you were my age, did you think about retirement? At what point did you get a financial planner? Or how did you find yours? Your attorney, your financial planner, your doctor, your home care agency, or. If you're given an inch, go for that proverbial mile. When the other party starts to share and engage in the dialogue, ask more questions. Keep tugging at each thread. Above all, be genuine and adopt an attitude of praise that they are teaching and sharing with you, and be glad. There's a mix and match opportunity here in these techniques. For instance, we can take the way to go and add a consultative. Take that way to go idea, that positive, that praise, and combine it. So you could use a way to go situation. Way to go on having that motion detector light pop on just as you drive up. No more fishing for car keys. You can go right into the house. Then you can add a consultative to that. Are there other things to change or fix? What would be next on your list? Here's another example. I have to say, going to that doctor's appointment with you was a big help for me. I now know her, and I can decide if I want to go there too, or whether I'd recommend her to others. So mix and match, everybody, add in what other appointments might be coming up. The next technique is called flip it. This is another conversation strategy that avoids defensiveness. It's to focus the conversation on somebody else's situation. For instance, your elders may bring up the malady of a neighbor or a friend in their faith community. And this time you flip it or seize the opportunity to talk and plan together. Here's an example. Cheryl next door has to have some surgery. They got to fix her hip from when she fell. So we'd begin by asking, well, what can we do to help? And discuss what that other person might need. Then flip it. Talk about how your family would manage if the same challenge happened to you. If you need another layer of deflection, don't start with what would you do, Mom, if you fell? That's too scary, abrupt, and it goes for the emotional jugular. Rather, place it on you. Wow, if I fell and I needed surgery, that would be scary. I'd need to gather my helpers. I imagine, well, how would you start? Take the situation and the vulnerability and work towards solutions. Problem solve together. You can best gauge whether to wax poetic yourself or whether the other person is ready to venture what they do. Now, when you're flipping, use the uncertainty to lay a foundation for future conversations. For instance, the younger may ask of an elder, is my phone number by your phone in case of an emergency? Or if you want to remove the me, you out of the conversation, it can go something like this. The younger could ask the elder, who has or knows about a key to your house? Listen for your opening. If you hear your loved one or a friend relaying how they'd helped somebody, or if you yourself have had the opportunity to help someone, you can flip that. Derek, you helped your aunt when she came home from the hospital. Have you ever thought about who would help you in a similar situation? Now, in this case, if our Derek is not at the point where he can fathom a response, you may need another trick to kind of propel the conversation. Insert this magic phrase. That got me thinking. You yourself can wonder aloud, and that same conversation may go just like this. Derek, you helped your aunt when she came home from the hospital. That got me thinking. Marcy has a friend that works in a home care agency. Have you thought about how you would help in a similar situation? And y'all, you can flip it on yourself. If you're helping, if you are rising to a call, or maybe you've had a close call, ask yourself, what would my plan be? Who would I call? Who would I ask? What's my plan for this? Now, recently, a friend of mine was telling me about having to divide up weekday care coverage for a friend who was recovering from an automobile accident. The family could handle it on the weekends, but the budget for home care was tight. So the friends divided up the chores and the times that they were going to step in and help out. Now, I advised my friend to take that planning one step further. I asked her what she would do if she were the one in recovery from an automobile accident. I asked her to think about her plan. She looked dumbfounded for a moment. And then she said, I've been so busy and involved in the doing that I hadn't really considered this circumstance for myself. And then the light bulb came on and she said, you're right. I got to give this some thought and create a team for me. So flipping can be for ourselves as well. While you're flipping, you can also employ storytelling. If an opportunity doesn't readily present itself, you can tell a story about a colleague at work. Make one up if you have to. Tell a story.
Hello. Well, hello. How are you?
Thank you. When you're making up a story, you could tell a story about Frank and how he had to leave work midday to go to Michigan, something about urgent care for his father. talk about how his father and his father's neighbors didn't have Frank's work number, and there was a delay in reaching him with the news. And then get those in your conversation to imagine Frank's situation. Use our magic phrase, that got me thinking. Wonder aloud how you and your loved ones might manage that same challenge. Flip it. And sometimes a headline can create a lead in for a conversation. Let the TV, let the news, or even gossip usher in the jack. This is especially effective for lowering resistance because most folks are often happy to talk about current events. For instance, back to the younger who wants to usher in a housing conversation. I just saw an article about real estate prices where you live. Are you seeing a lot of new construction, or are they tearing down old houses to make way for McMansions? What do you suppose your home is worth nowadays? And then another example, the younger who knows that their loved ones watch Channel 11 faithfully. Did you see that piece on Channel 11 about a local businesswoman who got scammed out of $150,000? That got me thinking. Just by watching that, I found out a lot about scams and what we can do to protect ourselves. Now, do notice, y'all, how the elders are responding to these jacks. Is their neighborhood changing? Or are they talking about houses being torn down to make way for new ones? If logic prevails, it might be a good time to discuss real estate as a topic, not as aging parents or their home or their ability to age in place, but rather broach it with industry and trends. Ask what they're observing. Talking about getting the most value out of your investment of the current home might lead to other conversations about moving or downsizing. These conversations can lead to more conversations, which is what we're after. And then future ones. Next steps would be how will we know conversations? How will we decide when a neighborhood is losing value or when we no longer wish to take care of a big old house? Talk about that. And as for scams, you and I can never know enough. And talking about scams can be one of the easiest conversations because we're all targeted. Because of that, use scams as a way to newsjack, teach, and plan. If you're sitting together watching television, scams will be on the news. If you see an article, share it with those you love and talk about it. If you or your friends are getting spammy phone messages on your mobile phone or via email, talk about what to do. Those threats are there. Who among us hasn't stopped has not stopped answering their landline because it's all spam calls? Are you rolling your eyes with me here? Take that a step further. Think and talk about what to do and how to decipher and discern scams. I had one fraud scheme that I learned about a while back, and it really helped me well. It armed me. It was called the Don't Say Yes scam. Seems that the scammers are calling you up and they're asking, is this so-and-so, your name? And they're waiting for you to say yes so they can record it. Then they take your name with you saying yes in your voice, and they're signing people up for credit cards and things online. And so that came to pass for me. I got a call from my insurance provider, Cigna, and this automated and mechanical voice said, "May we speak to Nancy? Is Nancy there?" And I didn't want to say yes. I even tried saying, and to see if I could get into where they were going with this conversation. And then they left a phone number, which was different from the one they were calling from, and told me that they had a question I needed to call them back about my Medicare drug plan. I didn't call that number. I didn't call the one that was left, but I did call my insurance provider, Cigna. Turns out that Cigna did have a question for me, and I handled it only when I knew I was talking to Cigna. So that was a little precautionary win on my part. And then I went on to have a chat with the representative on the phone about the Don't Say Yes scam and taught her the story so that they could be aware. So now I've told you Pass it on. Don't automatically reply yes on the phone when you don't yet know who you're talking to or who the other party is. All right, it's partnering, not parenting. You know, maybe if we're adult children of aging parents, or maybe responsible for an aging loved one or another, you know, nobody likes to be the heavy or the disciplinarian, and nobody likes to be the heavy as well. Partnering is about harmony, and partnering is certainly achievable. Everybody's uncomfortable when it comes to maybe the roles of the olders and the youngers reversing. Many people have found that these conversations have already turned dark or heavy, and there's some ways around that. In a moment, I'm going to share with you about how one family handled this kind of scenario. But while we're out there having the conversation, you know, it may be among biological families or families that we create. If you're a solo or a solo ager, you know that one of the perks of being solo is that we get to create our own families. We get to choose our own team and circle, and that's pretty neat. So no matter who constitutes your family, here's a story of a family unit that I worked with in tricky conversations. And it illustrates setting everybody at ease and agreeing to talk multiple times. They used humor to get the job done. And I call this one the we knit story. A family gathered because they needed to plan as a family unit for the care of their loved one and to support each other. There was a diagnosis and a medical path at hand, and they needed to create support and a plan. It was time to suss out who's the best person to do what. So in their first meeting, one nervous family member kept remarking about how they need to come together as a unit. And after a while, the conversation drifted and they were pointing at each other and saying unit and unit and unit. And they were giggling and laughing and kidding around. And they all decided to call themselves We Knit. We're We Knits, and our meetings are We Knit, and it stuck. The patriarch of the family finally said, well, you know, it's better to be a we knit than a nitwit. And all that stuck. This led to more family meetings. We're getting together at mom's for a we knit, they'd say, or we're going to have a we knit on Zoom on the 20th. Hope you can come. Together, these we knits, this family has been through a few elderly care challenges, and they continue to talk. They keep revisiting their plans from time to time. They're taking a collaborative approach. They're keeping it light. Everybody is on the same playing field. And in this case, a little bit of humor made a big difference. There's a lot of ways to have the conversation. Have the conversation is a mantra of mine since 2014. And there's no right or wrong way to do it. It's just a matter of staying in touch, you know, keeping the lines of communication open, looking and listening for your opening, and sooner or later it'll come. If the approaches that I've shared here seem uncomfortable or unnatural, or if it seems too early to employ them, you got them now. Today's goals. Did we meet them? Normalize. That means talking, agreeing to talk again, talk early, talk often. It gets easier and it becomes more familiar, and it becomes that thing we do. We knits. We're better prepared. Did you gain any new inroads? I've placed a notch in your belt today, and I hope you can use some of these ideas later. Did you learn any strategy, some tricks or phrases or tips? That got me thinking. When this stuff or something similar presents, you're going to recognize it and deploy a technique like way to go or newsjacking. You can use a flip it or the consultative approach. And now we know we can mix and match those too. And all this is going to result in making things a little less weird. I want to thank you for being here today, because this is all, talking is so difficult. This is a little bit about what I do. I'm a patient advocate who helps patients and their loved ones to navigate a complex healthcare system I work with adult children and their aging parents who are encountering change and requiring information and strategy. I specialize in solo agers, persons who by choice or circumstance who are aging without built-in family as caregivers. I always provide a complimentary consultation toward engagement, know that. And as you know now today, I present at conferences. So if you've heard something that you like today, you know I'm all about education and how stuff works. If I can help anyone or an organization that you know, I hope you'll get in touch with me. Now I have two things that are still coming your way. We've already alluded to one. There is a robust resources page coming your way. Jenny and her team have arranged to send everybody on this webinar a resources page that's going to have a lot more helpful conversational resources for everybody, and how you can get in touch with me. And I invite everybody here to connect with me on LinkedIn, look at my other social media like Facebook, because I'm rolling tips and tools continually on that. The second thing I've got coming your way is a special offer just for this group. You know, sometimes when I present, I get to create a special offer. And so I have one for you. Creatively titled Ask Nancy Anything. These are so much fun. Ask Nancy Anything is a 30-minute private consultation with me. You can ask questions about healthcare navigation or aging situations, how stuff works, where do I find, how do I begin, where do I get? Just ask me. We'll talk and I'll have some recommendations and resources for you. Whatever helps fill the bill. So it's a mini consultation. There's no further obligation. And it's for everybody on this webinar. Only $40 for that 30 minutes. We'll have a good, easy time and a solid conversation. And you can get the answer to that question you were always wanting to ask. The link's here on that slide, but it'll be on your resource page as well. For today, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I know that we've got some time for questions and answers, and I think Jenny has agreed to assist in this, but thank you for having me and having me back. Let's go into questions and answers.
Oops, sorry about that. Oops, my camera's off. Hold on one second. Okay, so some of you sent questions in, and one question was, my parents are 93 and have dementia stage 4. My siblings and I have tried over the past year to get them help in their apartment in New York City with doormen. My father keeps turning people away, refusing to let them in. We've also tried to have them adjust to an assisted living facility in Nashville where my sister lives. They have been to this wonderful facility 3 times, and each time my father has insisted every day that we go back home, wearing my sister down until she finally concedes. We are worried about their safety and quality of life. Any insight? Thank you for any insight you can offer.
Thank you very much for this question. You know, I've worked in this area with adult children and aging parents and with patients and loved ones for years, and this is a familiar intersection to me. The decision for assisted living happens about the time that housing decisions stop becoming housing decisions and become care decisions. This is especially true in instances of cognitive decline and advance of dementia. We got to remember that due to their disease, there may be dis-ease. We have to remember that dementia patients or patients requiring more physical help are not sorting or thinking the way that we are, or the problem may be that we're not sorting and thinking the way that they are. So with dementia, logic and filters are often impaired, but what remains longer is pretty basic, and that's behavior. Think about it. For any of us, even little kids, if somebody persists, throws a fit, wears somebody down, whittles them down, and they get what they want, then of course they're going to try it again. It worked for them, and they're going to repeat the behavior. But I'm also hearing the concern for safety. And how about proper programming for somebody who is in cognitive decline to meet them where they are in their thinking and their daily programming? I suggest that you speak with that assisted living staff who should have special training in redirecting patients who may be displaying signs of distress. And of course, consult with me. I'm happy to consult with family and staff. Take some comfort though in knowing that you, as a responsible party and likely agent with healthcare power of attorney, are making a care decision. You're doing right by your loved one. This is the responsibility of any agent with healthcare power of attorney, and it's also how we best serve. Now, one good resource and a well-known North Carolinian, in fact, now world-renowned dementia professional, is Teepa Snow, Teepa Snow. She has a very robust website and YouTube channel, and that will be on your resources page. And she hails from Eflin, North Carolina. Also, North Carolina proud is the North Carolina Dementia Alliance, a terrific agency that serves as a clearinghouse for information, family support, and they fundraise. The money stays in North Carolina for research. They also work in affiliation with Teepa Snow and the Alzheimer's Association of Eastern North Carolina. Another local agency, local to Jewish for Good in Durham, is the Duke Dementia Family Support. This will be on your resources page as well. They have impressive longevity with their staff. Many have been there 10, even 20 years. That's all I have on that one. You want to go ahead, Jenny?
Sure, thank you.
Can
And
I
just
just, Jenny, I'm sorry, can I, because of Nashville, Tennessee, am I allowed to say something? I don't want to use Nancy's time up, but my mom is at Abe's Garden on Woodmont Boulevard. So that person who mentioned about living in Nashville, Abe's Garden would be a great reference, and maybe this family member would not get worn down. It's well established. It's tied in with Vanderbilt. They do a lot of research there. It's a fun place. It's got a nice Jewish population in that area. Those might be some of the things that would be selling points. But Abe's Garden at 115 Woodmont Boulevard in Nashville, by West End Synagogue and also by Vanderbilt. Thank you.
Thanks.
Could I jump in for a second?
People helping people. This is tremendous.
I actually put in that question. And Kathy, if you could, I don't know if you could put your email in the, I would love to follow up on that. But actually it was Abe's Garden is the place they've been to 3 times.
That's the place to go.
Yeah, work with their staff. Their staff can give you helpful hints and tips and words, but ultimately I find comfort in knowing that it's a care decision and not just a housing decision. Things may have gone physically or cognitively beyond that. And we're always doing right by our folks when we're making the good care decision.
Erica, you're the one. I'll put my information in, but Stacy Abramowitz is the granddaughter to my mother, Eileen Handler, who's there. So it could be, Erica, that your parents might like to meet my mother, who's been there since 2014. She started in independent, she's in assisted, but the purpose of Abe's Garden was specifically because of memory care. And that was built a few years back by Michael Schmerling, headed it up. And he's a relation by marriage. So, but I'll give you my email address and I'll be glad to forward that information. But that would be great contact. Okay, I'll put it up now. Thank you.
Thank you. And could I just one more follow up on that? Nancy, your talk was so wonderful about how to actually, have these conversations. I wondered if you had any, you gave so many resources and I really appreciate your answer. It was wonderful and long, and I feel a little bit timid about taking a little more time, but I just wondered if you had, just specifically about speaking with people with dementia, like sort of like combining that amazing talk with just because we can't, some of that stuff we can't, I don't know if there's any way you can, that's my question.
I'm going to defer to the master and an easy way to find out new techniques to do this. And that is to get on Teepa Snow's YouTube channel. She actually acts it out. She goes into character and becomes the person living with dementia. And then the other person in the role play, you can learn a lot from watching her.
Beautiful.
Scads and scads of role playing YouTube videos. So I would go there.
Thank you so much.
And I do see, oh,
I
sorry,
had a comment.
go ahead, Jean.
Most of what Nancy said was about children dealing with parents, but negotiating between spouses requires different skills, I think, and we probably need some more tips on how to do that as well. And the other thing I was going to say is when you have conversations, particularly about end of life, to make sure that all of your children know your wishes and do it together so they know that each other knows and has acknowledged that. Because often we've been in the healthcare system for a long time, that the child who is the least involved, who lives out of town and comes in when things are, a decision has to be made, that's the one who does not want to make the final decision or does not agree with the final decision. Thanks.
You're absolutely right. Please, everybody, if you go anywhere, go to my Facebook page in celebration or observance of National Healthcare Decision Day. I have been rolling for a month, and I will continue during the rest of the month of April to really roll a lot on advanced directives, how to talk, how to plan. Lots of resources will be on your resources page and on that Facebook. You'll find a lot about how to talk to other people, making your wishes known and extending your independence that way. Do we have another question? Jenny?
Yes, so there were a couple other questions in the chat. So someone said, so far these tips seem to be addressed to children of older people. I'd like to hear you address how this person can talk to their adult children about issues of aging. For example, if I need their help, if I don't want their help, or if I decide to ask someone other than my children to help make my care decisions, how to break that to them.
You can use some of the techniques that I talked about today as inroads into that conversations. The examples I gave today may have been more caregiving rather than one-on-one to contemporaries or peers, but use them as an overlay. Think about each one of those techniques and apply them to where you are. Here's another magic bullet, another magic phrase that I use a lot, and it gets people's attention. Everything from a person living with dementia to talking to your own doctor. And I say, I need your help. I lead with that. Who doesn't want to give help? And so I'll go into a doctor's office and say, Dr. Sullivan, I need your help. Or I'll call my insurance company on the phone and the service rep is Beatrice, and I'll say, Beatrice, I need your help. Or whether I'm calling my bank, whether I'm talking to my daughter, whether I'm talking to my neighbor that I need to take me to the hospital on Thursday or now. I need your help is another magic phrase, just like that got me thinking was pointed out as a magic phrase. The resource page I'm sending to you, it has not just what I've talked about, but a lot more resources for one-on-one conversations. So I believe you'll find what you need there. If not, call me up.
Okay. Another question that came in beforehand was, what are some ideas, best practices to address with a loved one that they shouldn't be driving anymore?
Oh, there's another evergreen question, evergreen situation, and I appreciate that being brought up. There's no one right or wrong answer here. There's a lot of things you can do and try and can customize ideas to your need. And guess what? It involves tricky or difficult conversations that we're talking about today. I think the biggest thing for me is to ensure your loved one that they're going to be able to go everywhere that they need to go. Once I was looking at housing with a client of mine, and Mr. Jim needed to know that he could get to that men's group on Tuesday morning. That was his biggest thing. And boy, was he relieved when we came up with ways to make sure that he would get there on Tuesdays. And then as we toured some of the senior housing communities, he found out that they made trips every week. They made a rounds to the bank, the doctor's offices, the Walmart even. And all he needed to do was sign up. Conversations before it's time to let go of the driver's license involves us finding out, what are our options? What are the services out there? Who are the vendors? Also conversations about what could impair driving, like reflexes or vision changes, night vision changes. It's all proven stuff. And it's not the person, it's normal aging. Then if you're planning, talk about how will you know when? How will you know when it's time to stop driving? What will your markers be? Have those conversations, make them normal, talk early, talk often, and then have them think and know and declare when is. That way it's their decision and one that can be made with dignity and honor. Now, waiting until it's too late may get them or someone they don't even know injured in an automobile accident, and that's not the outcome that we want. You don't want strategy like what I've heard so many times. Well, we'll hide the car keys. Well, I'll just loosen his distributor cap and the car won't start. Except Dad then called AAA. So that's not an option. Talking about when the win is now, keep talking. You've lost some of your preparatory ammo, but keep building safety. We'll get you everywhere you need to go. Driving is for many about independence, ego's involved, identity is involved, dignity is at stake here. So first do that homework, know all the options for transportation. And as I mentioned before, some people will have just an honest talk and the driver will acquiesce. Other people, other groups just work to eliminate the need at all for somebody to drive, between them. They take over at every instance and everybody falls into a routine. Where it's appropriate, cognitively and physically, talk, teach, plan about taking a ride share. I've taught and planned and ridden with folks as they summoned an Uber and took it. And that's not suitable for everybody. You have to. It's a curbside, not door to door and not door through door, but it's a curbside service. You have to be able to transfer any equipment from your equipment into the car. You have to be able to stow your gear. Or you can place this conversation in the hands of your doctor. Advise the doctor at the next appointment that an assessment and recommendation is needed for the driving skills. It needs to be part of our next appointment. And have the patient hear it from the authority. This does it for a lot of people, and then you're not the heavy. Doctors can flag the file with the DMV, and drivers then have to take and pass certain written and driving tests to keep or renew their licenses. There's driving clinics too that assess go, no-go skills, or they make recommendations for technical adjustments and modifications. Duke has a driving clinic, and where I now live in South Carolina, the Prisma Hospital System has a driving rehabilitation program. And you can imagine many people are doing this as part of treatment too. It's medically oriented, it's professional. And instead of placing you in the position of the authority or being the heavy, and you never have to announce, well, you can't drive anymore. I hope those ideas are helpful for you.
Oh, thank you. So kind of the same question as above, above as I just asked, but when a loved one needs, what are some best ideas or practices to address when your loved one needs home care for activities of daily living, etc., but is refusing because they want to maintain their independence and privacy?
Activities of daily living, for those who may be unclear, means bathing or showering, dressing, getting in and out of bed, or transferring to a chair, walking, using the toilet, or eating. This is another frequent intersection for me and for many of us. There's a term in the media that researchers use, and I read this all the time. They refer to the work that we do as loved ones as informal caregiving. Now, brief rant. There's nothing informal about me having to assist my father in toileting. Nothing informal. I hate informal caregiving. I cringe when I hear it. But when help and support is needed for activities of daily living, there's a lot of opportunities here to talk and agree on what's needed. Remember, these are often care decisions we're making for our loved ones, and yeah, they're sticky. It may be time to introduce home care. Professionals sometimes may come in as standby for showering for safety purposes, which later may give way to assistance with showering. A good and professional caregiver is going to know how to handle these situations and encounters professionally and with dignity. They know how to make themselves valuable. For my own family, my mother did not want any home care in the house, although she needed it, and she was wearing those around her down. We introduced some home care as someone to do some light meal preparation and cleanup and give Dad a couple hours out of the house. Well, one day the caregiver, Joyce, made some cornbread, and my mother loved it. They actually bonded over cornbread. Soon it was Joyce is coming Tuesday, going to get some cornbread. And the potluck for the holidays is coming up, and I'm going to have Joyce make cornbread. So it's funny what makes people bond, but soon enough, Joyce was helping with standby. She was helping with showering. She was helping with other activities of daily living as a trusted person who delivered care professionally and with dignity. Take what you need and leave the rest from all of these ideas. And I invite you to read more from the resources page that will follow up.
Okay, can I ask one of the questions that came in during your talk, and we still have more that came in before as well, but it says, my Brooklyn born and bred father, who is very quick-witted and does not fall for anything, fell for 100. Oh, that was just a comment. It says, so far these tips seem to be addressed to children of older people. I'd like to hear about how I can talk to my adult children about issues of aging. For example, if I need their help, if I don't want their help, or if I decide to ask someone other than my children to help make my care decisions, how to break that to them.
Oh, those are all really good needs for conversations. Assembling your team, building your team. It may include adult children, or it may not. You may build your own team. And sometimes the adult children are not the best person for the jobs. We may designate them as our agent with power of attorney, or we may not. And so it is not a phenomenon that I hear a lot. I hear the olders are saying, I can't get my youngers to come to the table. They refuse to believe I'm going to ever pass on or need help. And then other times it's the youngers who are saying, Mom clams up every time I try to help her with the finances. She just clams up. Or Dad plays his cards very close to his chest. And so these things are very normal. Use the communication techniques that we've talked about today as inroads, as overlays to whatever your situation is. If you are online, and I haven't mentioned it, there are an awful lot of Facebook groups that talk about, and people share how I did it. What's going on, and you read about other people's situations, and it may be just like yours, and that's exactly what I need, or oh, that'll never fly in my family. And so take what you need and leave the rest. I do a tremendous amount of talking and teaching and speaking on communications, much more than we could ever go through today. But what I'm hearing from y'all are completely normal, and that whole early talk often thing really rings true.
Okay, next question was, What are the major risk factors and protective factors for healthy aging? What are the major lifestyle changes that an aging population can make to enhance physical and psychological health and well-being?
All right. The first part, the less than positive part, the risk part, there's many. In my professional opinion, the risks are being caught without a plan, unprepared, not talking, heads in the sand, denial, and isolation. Isolation and loneliness are very real risks. We saw that play out during the pandemic. The best preemptive action, in my opinion, is to build your team. And that may or may not include family members. It may include people that you choose, chosen family. It may also include certain professionals. My parents had a team of an elder care attorney, a financial professional, I as a healthcare power of attorney, and my sister as financial. And we brought several other people onto the team as they passed in age. We need to build support. Especially true for solo agers. If you're a solo, I'm a solo. I write and speak and teach about this a lot. We have to think about who we want, what we need, what fills the chairs on our board of directors, if you will, and think and talk about transportation. What do I think I'm going to need medically? Are my legal ducks in a row? What about housing? Is it good to stay where I'm at? Do I need to think about future? This patient advocate wants everybody here, National Healthcare Decision Day, April 16th or not, get your agents designated for your power of attorney. And if we're thinking about just the ones that we love, who's our coverage? Who is respite? How are needs going to be addressed? Do you know your neighbors? Do you know the neighbors of your loved ones? Do they have your phone number? How could you get that phone number? So will they look in? Do you have your neighbors' phone numbers? Walk over there sometime or connect with your loved one's neighbors and establish that connection. And this goes for you and me. Who is your middle of the night person? Who can you call in the middle of the night? That's always good. The second best piece of advice I'd have, though, is be in community. You can find it here. You can find it here in your faith. Be a part of. You might tap into a faith community. For others, it may be politics. It may be a volunteer effort. It may be a mutual pastime like hiking. I, along with others, teach about this a lot. You will see a lot about this by the folks that you'll encounter via the resource page. But join in the conversation. Get in some Facebook groups too. Go at it also from a point of service to others. Service to others. It's not what we can get in here and take. It's, can I recognize and help a newcomer? Can I make somebody I encounter feel more comfortable? People did that for me. I want to do that for them. How can I pay it forward? And that gives way to the biggest thing that's for me. And that's for healthy aging. I can sum it up in one word, and that is purpose. Find, keep, or give purpose. Now, I'll say that again. Find, keep, or give purpose. Have that reason to get up out of bed. Why are we here? Why are we here on this earth as long as we have been? Still got work to do? Why does your loved one matter to you? Why do they matter? Reinforce all of that. With your loved ones, even ones who may be experiencing physical and cognitive decline, what are we going to do today? What are we going to do now or this week? What's coming up? Tailor the conversations to their ability, whether that's physical or cognitively. And look, we're all here today in community with purpose. And we have to ask ourselves, are we maximizing what we get? And more importantly, are we finding ways to give? So finding purpose in your life. That's my biggest recommendation.
Thank you. Someone in the chat wrote, what is the difference between an advocate and a geriatric care manager? What is the job of a geriatric care manager?
Very good question. Another frequent question. If you're one of those people who studies those Venn diagrams, the circles that overlap, our professions are very similar. Aging life care, geriatric care managers are now many known as aging life care professionals. They rebranded their name. They're older profession, more well established. They got about 30 years on us. And they handle an array of medical, social, home care support type scenarios, both in care management and in the delivery of care management. I think patient advocates, utilizing the word patient, initially come from a more medical standpoint. What my experience was is that we were designed to go with, when the patient advocates in a hospital do great work. They can really make stuff happen. But when you're discharged, they stay there and you go where? And so patient advocates are an industry that was only born about 2009, designed to journey with home, hospital, rehab, home, got to find a new home. We travel with folks. And it's not just medical advocacy, because that often spills way into legal matters and financial matters. How are we going to pay for care? What does my insurance cover? What about housing? That's going to change. Or how do I stay where I am safely? And then support, which we've been talking a lot about in this question and answer segment.
And then the last question I have is, how do you suggest talking about planning for aging and navigating difficult conversations when your loved one is unable to process and adapt to their current physical and mental abilities because they see themselves as they were in their middle age and insist on remaining independent? They perceive nothing is wrong and don't understand why I'm seeing all these doctors who are diagnosing treatable medical conditions. They hear provider recommendations and go on about their business as usual, and they don't want to see a need for mental health diagnosis or treatment.
To that, I'd say, that's cognitive issue at play and some denial. We all have denial. I still think like I'm 28. It sounds like the person that's being described has some physical malady, but also some inability to process it using cognition that you and I may have. So they may not be sorting as we're sorting. They may not take information in or have the ability to follow the suggestions, the logic of the recommendations, as do we. So we're coming from two different places often. And as I've mentioned, it may be a situation where it's not their decision, that care decisions are at hand, that the agent with healthcare power of attorney needs to step farther in, all the while talking. There's a way to step in and do it and plan together and to provide options and choices for persons with dignity and grace. There's ways to do that. You can always, milk or orange juice, Dad. Something as simple as that. And I'm not making light of it. It's a conundrum to have to think one way and provide programming for somebody that may be in a different place. Denial, flat out denial for somebody who's operating okay cognitively. One of the most frustrating things about anybody in healthcare or caregiving is that people have the right to make poor decisions. And a lot of times we have to stand by. What I say so often is safety is my litmus test. If I see something unsafe, I not only have a duty to warn, but we need to address that. But people do have the right, not only in aging or healthcare decisions, addiction, lots of the emotional behavior. People have the right to make poor decisions. And then my boundaries go straight to safety. I will step in. I will even step in beyond an adult child if I'm fearing for mama for daddy's safety. I protect that person. And so it's a whirling situation with a lot going on, a lot of emotions, a lot of abilities are whirling also. Find your peace in knowing that you're doing right by the person. If you are an agent or a service provider, exercise your best services, exercise what's best for that person to your best ability.
I think I hit all the ones in the chat and the ones from ahead of time. So that's the only ones I have. If anybody, other people have ones they want to put in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask. I think we still have about a few minutes, 10 minutes left. Cheryl, I see you.
Oh, my question may not be completely focused for today, but I wonder about the mountain of paperwork that's generated by the healthcare and the assisted livings and all of this. And if you have a couple where one of them is not functioning and therefore the whole thing goes to the well elderly, how do you approach that conversation, and are there resources to assist?
Thank you for that question. And it is an overwhelming amount of paperwork involved just in the healthcare system. I encounter folks whose spouse passed, and that spouse had all the passwords and had always done all the bills. We have no idea how to get into the banking, and yikes. Other times it's in my own family, my mother was having COPD, and she knew that her faculties were starting to wane, and she was trying to bring us in on trying to snap us in on the household management, and it was hard. There are resources available. I'll tell you about a couple, and these aren't on the resource list. There is an industry called daily money managers, and their professional organization, which has a directory, is American Association of Daily Money Managers, or AADMM. AADMM. Daily money managers come in and do just that. And there are some in the Triangle area, if that's where you're located, and other folks can look on that site or contact me. I'll also say, and this is a really good thing, part of the industry of patient advocacy is a subset or a niche called medical billing specialists. They are professionals who deal with nothing but medical billing, insurance disputes, and appeals. So thankful for them, because you can get in the weeds about this stuff, and it's very stressful. And we need to protect our credit so that we can keep paying for the services that we're going to need. And so there's an entire robust niche inside patient advocacy. Contact me if you need to know a little more about that. I can put you in touch with some directories to find patient advocates, and there are some search by zip code or search by need directories, and then I can make some recommendations to you. But there's people that deal with this, and I've had to use daily money managers and patient advocates as well in lots of situations. Thank you for bringing that up.
Other people have questions they want to unmute themselves, they can.
Maybe they're just waiting for the Ask Nancy Anything consultation so it can be in private.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Cheryl.
I have one more.
Okay.
And this is generated out of a very close friend of mine who's recently had to move into I guess an adult community, but they have a nursing home associated. And that is how she's trying to advocate for her declining husband and having difficulty in the staff. And they aren't paying attention sometimes, which is a problem to her. She doesn't want to offend them, but she does want them to check on the urine in the bag before it turns red, as it did. And then they seem to have a very low threshold to transfer her husband to the hospital, which then generates those medical bills we talked about, which then makes her exhausted visiting all the time. And the issue is kind of how to have that conversation, which spurs them to do better in spite of, all of the staffing problems and everything that happened out of COVID. So if you could talk a minute about that, I would appreciate it.
Yes. Wow, y'all bringing up all the frequent flyers today. If the person is in a care facility, assisted living, memory care, or skilled nursing, please know that you can commandeer a plan of care meeting anytime you want one. Usually when people move in, there's a plan of care meeting shortly after they've all gotten to know their new patient or new resident. But plan of care meetings are made up in care facilities of your director of nursing usually runs it. Then you'll have representative from nursing, from nutrition, from recreation, from the therapies, and usually from the billing office. And they will staff your person, and you can talk there. People can conference in by phone and sometimes video. I go in as patient advocate sometimes, both live or on the phone. So know that occurs. Now, if you're in a facility that is independent living or independent living with supportive services, meaning maybe they have a healthcare agency on site, go to that agency first, obviously give them an opportunity to address the problems and have a miniature plan of care meeting there. It could be that community is contracted with, say, the Acme Corporation. It could be also and you'll need to look at your paperwork, that other agencies can come in too. So if you don't like Acme, there are more where that came from. Interview more agencies, see if they'll allow other agencies in. I know a lot of my clients have moved in into independent living, and they wanted to bring the agency and the person that they were already familiar with. And so they looked at the paperwork and said, oh yeah, we can, Georgette can come on with us. We can bring her in. If you're just in your own home and not happy with your contracted agency, there are many, many more. It used to stun me when I lived in Wake County, North Carolina, to both know and announce that there are 230 home care agencies in that county, operating in that county alone. There are some choices. As a patient advocate, I got to know my team. I don't care about the marketing person. I want to know their nurse. And if it's me recommending an agency, I want to know their owner. I want to know how they train people. I want to know how they onboard their people and what kind of background checks and all of that they're doing. So step closer in. It's your loved one. You have a right. There are options for you. And it's just a matter of calling that plan of care meeting or that quasi plan of care meeting. Step in and let them know what you want.
Nancy.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to break in here because I've had experience in the past with calling those meetings and then being told things would be done. Let's say those 3 showers a day for my mom, which never, ever, ever in 2 years happened. Mm-hmm. Each time we called it back because they were storing dry goods in the shower at her room. I hired other people to be with her to at least give her a bath in bed because mm-hmm. it was crazy. And this was considered one of the best nursing homes in the state at the time. And so my question is, when you're told one thing, but they do something else or don't do what they say they're going to do, what are your options? I think it's a bit of a follow-up to what Cheryl was saying, because maybe they're not doing what they said. Likewise, when you say, whoa, no, the nursing staff, the fact of the matter is there was one RN, but there was only one LPN on the floor, she was the one giving medicine, which she also, I would point out, almost killed my mother one time, giving her the wrong medicine. So, I mean, there are problems that do you have to sue them? I mean, that's ridiculous.
You do have recourse there, especially in a care situation. Assisted living, memory care, skilled nursing are all regulated by the state. So if we have to flex the muscles of our state agencies who provide oversight, we can certainly do that. In North Carolina, it's called the Division of Health Regulation Services. Division of Health Regulation Services. They'll have different names depending on what state you're in. You can call the Division of Aging and just say, what's the name of my agency that regulates this? You can call and report your concern. You can call and report an anonymous concern. They'll take the information and you won't get any feedback from an anonymous thing. But ask them, what are my rights and my responsibilities in this matter? You can also consult an elder care attorney as to what your rights and responsibilities are, because there are plenty of people out there litigating, and we want to avoid that. Obviously, we want to work in harmony and not feel like we're putting our loved ones' care in any kind of jeopardy. But if you need to flex the muscles of the state that regulates that facility, or intimate that you know about that, or that you're coming to know your rights and responsibilities. And another option I would also say, there's another industry called legal nurse consulting that can, with your permission, come in and read that chart. I read charts, not as well because I'm a social worker undergrad and a counselor in my master's work, but a lot of patient advocates are RNs that walk right in and read a chart and go, why wasn't this medicine given? It was ordered by the doctor, but you didn't start it until Thursday, what. And then I see that PTs was ordered for 3 times a week, but you're only doing it once. Learn, you can ask to see a chart. They're hard to read sometimes, but you have rights. Let them know that you know a little something, or that you're finding out more. And they'll know, and they likely are very aware of you because you have eyes on your person, and they have to respect that. I hope that helps in some way. If you want to talk further about it offline, we can have a conversation by phone or a Zoom consultation.
Well, just to be respectful of everyone's time, I wanted to say that I don't know if I will wrap up the question and answer period, but it sounds like Nancy, you've offered such a great thing about a promotion or a service to be able to ask you some questions, and we will be sending out the resource link. As Nancy said, I'll be sending that out in an email to y'all. Nancy, this was just an amazing presentation. Thank you so much for sharing your time and your expertise with us here today. And thank you all for being here. I like I said, we'll do the Zoom clap, right? that was fantastic. And we really thank you. And this is the second time you've been at this conference, and we had you back because you're amazing. So thank you. And thank you again to all of you. Tomorrow's presentation is going to be Healthy Brain Aging with Dr. Parker. If you have not registered for that, we hope you do that. And I put a link to some of the resources Nancy mentioned, but like I said, I will also be sending it in there, and also some of the resources from the other speakers, in addition to the registration link if you want to register for the other programs coming down the pipeline. And as I said, I may have said this before, we really take this conference very seriously. We love to hear your feedback. I will be sending a survey out, an evaluation form at the beginning of next week once all the talks are done. So if you can make notes today of the things you'd want to say, and we'll send it all out on next Monday or Tuesday. And we'd love to hear your feedback just so we can keep the things that are going well and improve the things that maybe aren't. So we hope you'll do that. And again, Nancy, thank you so much. And thank you all for being here today. And hopefully we'll see lots of you tomorrow as well. So have a great day, everyone.